6 months ago, I made a video where I claimed Poland would be the next new winner of the Eurovision Song Contest. Poles, I can only apologise to you because I appear to have unleashed some kind of voodoo curse on your nation. That's because this year's Polish national selection is an unmitigated disaster already, before a single note has been sung. Last year, we had one of the best national selections from Poland in recent times, and it felt like a corner had finally been turned. That optimism was dramatically misplaced. Today, we're going to look at this year's excuse for a show and review what feels like one of our first near nailed-on non-qualifications of the year. It's difficult to understate just how much of an anti-glow-up this national final has had. Last year we got a well-produced show, shot live, and honestly one of the strongest top threes of any national final from last year. It was one of, if not the, single most improved national selection in Europe. Unfortunately, the year after, we've proven that was an exception rather than the rule. This year the show might be pre-recorded and there'll be no results on the day. Instead, they're going to be announced on the breakfast show the following morning. The show itself has landed in the 10 PM slot at night, just after The Voice Kids, which of course couldn't possibly be moved for it, and there's a general negative environment and negative vibe around the entire thing, and four withdrawals. We'll get into why, but I think given it's Eurovision in 2026, you can probably guess why they're happening. We're going to get into that in this video, but of course we definitely need to have a look at some of the songs here first so we can elaborate on just how dire things really are. We're starting with a returning and previously selected artist from 2020, Alicia, with her song Pray.
Pretty girls rock. I've been on my shit, now it's pretty on top.
We already have more songs with religious implications just a few short days after the demise of Catharticus.
Catharticus.
This one is a tad less ritualistic, doesn't remind me of the Amogus meme, and is much less coherent. This is trying to be a gospel song, it's trying to be a soul song, it's trying to be a rap song. Unfortunately, it does not succeed in stitching these genres together in any coherent way whatsoever. The first minute and 15 seconds of this song are straight down the line gospel music, and they show off Alicia's voice well. Then suddenly, it's a rap song. Like, the music literally stops and starts again. And at that point, the entire thing falls over for me. It's just so bizarre that this spends a minute foreshadowing and preparing you for a big, passionate ballad that's going to show off her genuinely amazing vocals, only to take it away, again, do something else completely, and execute it really, really poorly. The rap song within this song is just bad. The quality is poor, her voice doesn't work well for it, and it has the most irritating and inexplicable stylistic auto-tune that I think I've ever seen in a Eurovision entry.
On my go, move fast, take the style, take this class.
If this song has a peak, it's right at the start. That's where all the drama, that's where all the big notes are, and it just never gets there again. It kind of ambles around aimlessly for the rest of the time, and you end up with a bit of a formless mush. It won't work at Eurovision, and I don't really think it would have gotten into this selection if it weren't for the fact that Alicia is already an established artist. I don't mean to say that she doesn't have a great voice, because she does, and she clearly looks up to the groups and the singers that symbolise this kind of genre of music. It's a consistent thread that runs through much of her back catalogue as well. But this song just isn't the one, it's just not right for this format. As it happened, her entry from 2020 also felt like two songs stitched together. This effort is even less coherent than the first and would have little to no chance of getting anywhere in Vienna in May. The right, and in my opinion only decision, is to leave it here. Now let's move on from the disjointed to the bizarre, in the form of Piotr Pergovski with his song Paravani Tango.
Paravany tango plażowe gibango, on ją trzyma mocno I ona trzyma go.
The man flexes his muscles as the seal moves. This lady doesn't mind this fat guy. The barefoot lady moves her finger. The gentleman pulls in his stomach as hard as he can. Just like the trainer told us all, you have to try hard to get a 10. I'm not sure what's more insane. The fact that this song about fat Polish men on the beach has made it to the selection, or that Piotr Pergovski is fairly well known in the country and the rest of the show is so bad that there is a genuine chance that this might win. Piotr is 72 years old and he's been working in Polish film, TV and theatre since the 70s and 80s. His career has taken him from Greco-Roman wrestling as a teenager to becoming an established TV host, actor and the voice of Boo Boo Bear. He's dabbled in music over his career as well, including writing a song in 2000 for a presidential candidate, and now he's done this. This song pretty explicitly channels Latin American music and vibes, and these are not the kinds of things that I had typically associated with the Polish Baltic Sea coast in the past. But as I've learned in recent years, in summer it really does have that kind of mood if the weather is good at least. Seriously, the beaches on the Baltic Sea are top class. I will say though that the overall image of, say, Copacabana is more universally understood across Europe than, say, that of Gdansk. But this is surprisingly relevant to Polish culture nonetheless. Stylistically, it actually doesn't feel a million miles away from Solo by Blanka, and to be fair, I would rather listen to this than ever go back to that. Everything about this is silly and ridiculous, and by all measures, I should find it awful. And to be honest, that's what it is. But on some level, it's deeply entertaining, and will only be made more so if the live performance is a total disaster. I want it to be tuneless, out of time, tacky, and choreographically a crime against humanity. Everything that can go wrong must go wrong with this in order for it to be enjoyable. Bonus points if he forgets the words, accidentally goes the wrong way while attempting to dance and runs into a backing dancer, or if he trips over during the performance. The worse this is, the better it will get. That said, it will come dead last if it goes to Eurovision, and it might get a single-figure number of points. But it would be funny while it did it. This is the kind of thing that's fine to have in a national selection if it's the comic relief that comes last. Any other circumstance means something has gone very wrong. Given that this might do quite well, something has very clearly gone extremely wrong. Next up is Anastazja with her song Wild Child.
Maybe I'll give you a taste. These words of a melody, ain't no other.
If H&M were trying to look a little bit edgy, this would be the song that they'd pick for that advert. Polish May Muller's previous releases, including a pretty successful collab with the one-time junior Eurovision winner, Roxana Vegiel. I'm not sure this is going to do quite as well as that. This is a fine pop song, if a little bit laboured in its execution. It kind of trudges along without breaking any new ground, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But there's a reason why pop music in this style is just about the busiest and most competitive field in the entire music industry. And it's one of the most difficult to break into, especially if you're singing in English. If you're looking for the next pop innovation or something that reinvents the wheel, you're going to be disappointed here, just as you're disappointed by the rest of the selection. What this does have, at least, is a full 30 seconds carved out for a dance break. That's a lot of space to fill and will either elevate this into being a contender or condemn it to ignominy. Entirely dependent on how good the choreo is and how well it's executed. I can't find a single past live performance of Anastazja that demands this level of her, and for that reason this is a really big unknown. I'd love to be surprised positively, but when it comes to dance breaks for people who haven't shown that in the past, it's unusual for expectations to be exceeded in a particularly dramatic way. Usually they fall short. She's also a great singer, but if this has the level of choreo that it demands, we don't know what effect that's going to have on her breath control, and it may be that by the time the final chorus comes around, she's run out of steam. I started here with a May Muller comparison, and we can see what happens in the worst case when things don't go to plan. That live performance in Liverpool in 2023 was a mess, and if this doesn't go well, it'll be equally so. Seriously, that note from May Muller is burned onto my brain to curse me forever.
Instead I wrote a song.
Hopefully things do go to plan and everything does come together for Anastazja, because then at least this could be a somewhat viable option, even if it will be absolutely overshadowed at the contest by superior girl bops that we've already seen from elsewhere. Next, it's time to discuss the one song that I think actually has the potential to qualify for the final of Eurovision. Seriously, precisely one song in the entire selection, and even then it's gonna need a revamp to do so. That's Basia Giewont with her song Zimna, Woda. This is a kind of Polish lightweight Goe kind of vibe. That is potentially quite a strong combination given the past success of Goe in Eurovision, and it also means that this has something that no one else in this show really has. That is something that distinguishes it. There are elements of this that I like and I think are really working. Basia's voice is powerful and distinctive and leans into the kind of Slavic traditions that Europe has had some but not too much contact with over the last few years. It's had a presence, but it hasn't become a trope, and for that reason it's still effective. Also, Basia's voice cuts through the mix really nicely and goes really well with the synth/folk combination that's underneath her. Unfortunately, this song is just lacking a little in some ways. We build and we build up to the chorus, only to be hit by a classic example of big build-ups and disappointing drops. I was ready for this song to explode, only for it to recede again and leave me wanting. This is a common thread throughout this song. The development is just missing a little bit. The same is true for the last minute or so, where you really want to build to a big finish, and nothing is is hitting hard enough at the moment to make me feel like I've moved anywhere. Instead, it kind of feels at the moment like the song is fizzling away, as is my interest in it. The good news is for this song, a revamp is in fact coming. That means there's opportunity here and there's room to grow in a way that the other songs in this selection don't really have. And that means I can reserve my judgment, hold my breath, and hope that Basia saves this national selection from oblivion. Please, you're our only hope. Don't let us down. After that, I would really love to see a staging that is as witchy and mysterious and folksy as possible, because that's really what the song is calling to. We've now gone through some of the songs in this selection, and enough to make my point anyway. I'm not going to waste your time with Young Snape or Miss I Buy YouTube views, because the songs are dull and there's only so much analysis you can do of nothing burgers. Overall, as you can tell, things are not very good, and there's a number of reasons for this. Once again, just as we talked about with Norway, one of the key factors in this show is artists being unwilling to participate in Eurovision alongside Israel. This caused havoc in the selection, with the original 10 participants going down to 8 because 2 withdrew from the main show and both of the reserve acts withdrew. The reason there is 8 instead of 10 in this selection is that the broadcaster literally ran out of replacements. One of those who withdrew, Karolina Czarnecka, in a post on Instagram, summed up the circumstances under which the whole contest is taking place this year in pretty brutal and devastating fashion. Although the ego begs for validation and the stomach churns at the thought of possible gains, because everything has already been there, the set design, the funding, the appetite, our values demand a return to the artist's code. One that exists nowhere officially, yet unofficially does, and includes a point that reads, "Do not consent to the suffering of another human being, because even if in my own backyard the flowers of apparent prosperity are temporarily in bloom, another garden is flooded with blood." Karolina has extremely aptly described the circumstances which have been imposed upon the Eurovision Song Contest. These circumstances are imposed not by the people directly responsible for organising it, but at a higher level, at the level of directors general across the EBU. The contest's reference didn't choose to be in this situation. The director of the contest didn't choose to be in this situation. Directors general of public broadcasters across Europe chose this because the domestic political landscape of each country and the geopolitical position of each country forced them to. It's absurd then, by the way, that it's the ESC director who didn't have a role in making this decision who is the one who has to go to the press and defend it. I get that it's his job to represent the contest, but really it should be the leadership of the EBU, not Eurovision specifically, that answers for a decision that the EBU, not Eurovision specifically, made. This whole Eurovision mess is a symptom of a much wider societal failure to identify, condemn, and stand against widely documented and reported on genocide. If anyone wants to argue with my use of that word, then they can do so with the domestic Israeli human rights organizations who have described it as such, as well as the United Nations and the International Association of Genocide Scholars. I'm not giving you my opinion, I am giving you the qualified observations of people who've spent their life studying and identifying where such a thing is taking place. These external circumstances do not absolve the Polish broadcaster, just to be clear. This is a national selection that has been a complete organizational mess for years now. Polish Eurofans will remember all too well the controversy of 2023, where the overwhelming favourite amongst the public, Jan, was beaten thanks to the jury going for Blanka, a jury that was widely considered at the time not to be impartial. That selection was so controversial that OG Poland, which is the Eurovision fan club in the country, took the broadcaster to court after they refused to release the full results, and they won. That's the only reason we know the scale of Jan's victory in the televote in that selection that year. In addition, several Polish Eurovision news outlets released a statement some months ago saying that if Poland withdrew from the contest, they would support them in doing that, because of the ongoing participation of Israel. There's signs everywhere of the disconnect between Eurovision fans and the broadcaster on this front. It's difficult to think of any country that institutionally underachieves in Eurovision on the scale that Poland does, outside of the complacency displayed by some of the big five, owing to the lack of jeopardy of potentially going out in a semi-final. This is a country with over 38 million residents, with more than 60 million Polish people worldwide. That's a huge amount, and by rights should be more than enough to consistently challenge at a high level in the way several much smaller countries do. For comparison, the entire annual TV budget of the Moldovan broadcaster is 10 million euros. The Polish broadcaster's budget is at least 40 times larger than this. So why, this year, has Moldova produced a national final with more viable entries, more prospects at the contests, and with results actually on the same day, while Poland is saddled with this nonsense? This is symptomatic of the wider rotting from the inside out of public broadcasting in Poland, which has lurched from funding crisis to funding crisis, and, due to the non-payment of license fees in the country, has essentially lived on on repeated government subsidies and bailouts. This has rendered it critically exposed to political interference. The wider exploitation, vandalism, and mismanagement of public institutions by the previous Polish government has only worsened the situation. On the most basic level, Poles deserve better value for money from their public broadcasting services. And that means events that cost a lot of taxpayers' money like this one should come with an expectation that a certain level of quality is met. That threshold has not been passed here by any measure. For Polish Eurofans, my heart can only go out to you, because it must be so maddening and frustrating to see every dawn turn out to be false, and constant underperformance, despite the fundamentals of the contest at present massively tilting the scales in your favour. No top 5 finishes since 1994, and only 3 top 10 finishes in history is utterly abysmal for a country in this position. You deserve much better than this. With the loss of key televoting allies in the form of Iceland and Ireland, Poland could well be on its way to a second non-qualification in 3 years, especially with the return of the juries in the semi-finals undermining the advantage that Poland would usually have from the public. There are obvious models to copy, like that in Finland, for example, which could contribute to this ongoing trend of disappointment being reversed. Sadly, at present, we have a broadcaster that has never shown any intention of learning the lessons that need to be learned for anything to change. My optimism 6 months ago was, in my opinion, one of the biggest misjudgments I have made on this channel, and I am so disappointed to see what has happened now. On that sad note, I really wish Poland better in the future of this contest, because there is so much untapped potential. But for now, it's going to have to be a downcast ending to the video. Thank you as always for watching, and look out for an unusual backdrop for the next couple, because I'm going to Estonia tomorrow. I know, fork found in kitchen. For now, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it and you haven't already. You can find my socials and my Patreon in the description. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon.